Well, hello, hello, hello. Good morning. It is second Saturday, sometimes known as Worship of the Sunday, and we Cora whores are going to church. We're sweating like a Cora whore in church. That's what's happening here. That's how we get demonetized right off the top. Doesn't matter. We don't qualify for monetization ever since YouTube changed their rules. So we're probably never going to do that. That's totally cool. Want to thank Hyde for being my sermon practice buddy today. Thanks for showing up, Hyde. We'll have some more Cora Horse showing up any minute now. I'm currently exporting thought at the last minute. Oh, I should premiere the new hymn, the new Godless hymn at sermon today. And so I am currently exporting the new Godless hymn. It's at 71%. That means we're going to show it at the end of sermon today, which is probably good. We've got Diana. If we've got Hyde and Diana with us, look out, Christians. We've got Korihor with us. Who can be against us? We are the Godless Church of Korihor. You don't have to be atheist to be part of our crew, but do it anyway. I want to remind everybody, as you see in the little caption here, we are still working on the Eventbrite is up. The website, I have so many updates happening to the website that's not showing on the website yet. So it's a little bit moot, but so you get it in your head and plan it out. If you can make it to St. George on the 22nd of February, we have the first ever in-person event of the Church of Korihor in person. And it's going to be great. It's going to be happening at the event at the venue that's directly next door to Thrive St. George. Those of you who are Thrivers, I am going to Thrive for the first time. Been very excited for a long time to experience Thrive. Never done it before. Probably be the only time. I don't know. I'll see. We'll see what relationships we forge there. But we figured while people are in town after the event is over, let's have people come over, and then we're also, of course, promoting. You don't have to go to Thrive. I mean, they're completely unrelated organizations, right? Yeah, it's going to be interesting, Thrive. Well, Hyde. But our event. There's no cost to go to the event, and all you need to do is show up, man. So anybody who wants to, please come out. Plan to be here. It's going to be at the Hilton Garden Inn in St. George, downtown St. George, Utah. And I'll be excited to see you guys. I'll be presenting a little canonization there and just speaking for a minute. But mostly it's a chance to see some artwork in person, purchase some art to benefit. The proceeds all go to benefiting Parish Families, an organization in Colorado City, which is supporting women and families that have been more or less abandoned by the vacating FLDS leadership. So you have a lot of women who had really started from scratch after Warren Jeffs was put into prison, and a lot of people in this community have been just spiritually devastated, not just because, of course, their originalist fundamentalist Mormon church has collapsed, and but their whole support structure, even their financial support structure, has collapsed. And so organizations like Cherish Families are very important for these women. I have some footage I haven't released yet because we're still finalizing with Cherish Families that we can officially say that we're supporting them. But we've already told them, look, we're going to cut you a check and at the end of this event. And it's super exciting. And ever since we announced it, I am not the only artist who has, put items up for auction. My niece and my nephew have put up artwork. Oh, sorry, I guess my hymn finally finished processing, and I wasn't ready for it. Sorry, I jolted a little bit there. Yeah, I guess we're gonna start today with the new hymn. I used up enough time. So in any event, please plan to come out if you can. Otherwise, we are going to be broadcasting uh, on the Church of Cora Horse channel live, so people will be able to watch the event live because Megan Connor, the infamous YouTuber who does true crime. You may know her as the cousin of Lori Vallow. I don't, that's not really what she would choose to be known by. But in case you didn't know, Megan Connor is actually a domestic violence survivor herself, and this is a charity event that is very near and dear to her heart. And she is also a singer. She's an opera singer, and she had volunteered, in fact, last year. She volunteered. I'm gonna hold her to this. 2 things. She said, I love Overview, the concept." She said, "I love the concept of Overview. I want to record one for you." And we actually had Megan on, during a Wednesday service last year, where she did give us, walk us through an overview of her own that's just kind of invented out of her own, practice, because she does life coaching and with her clients. And I found it very insightful, very helpful. I thought it was a beautiful experience. And, she got passionate about it when I announced that we were going to do Overview. And I said, I want you to experience what it's like for me when I experience what I consider to be Overview, which is our meditation practice, our compassionate meditation practice. And that was me listening to Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot from the book Pale Blue Dot, the Pale Blue Dot. And it was, and she was like, I didn't know anybody else did that but me. That there are atheists all over the world who love Carl Sagan and love Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. And so in any event, so uh, she expressed her interest in doing that for us. And I'm like, yes, a million times yes. She's very good at it. And I said, and she also said, "Who sings the songs, the Church of Korihor hymns? Who is that woman, that beautiful voice?" And I was like, and this was before. I mean, the new versions of our hymns, by the way, I that Suno is cranking out for us are off the charts, amazing. I was going to show you guys. Maybe I still will. Maybe I'll save the yeah, maybe I'll save the new hymn for the end. What do you guys think? But I want to show you guys here in a minute the new version of We're Going Home. But in any event, she says, that woman who sings that song, sings those hymns. Who is she?" And I'm like, "That's Suno." And she's like, "What? It's AI?" I'm like, "I know, but the thing is, I don't have the resources to not do AI. I mean, right now we're just taking the resources that we have, and honestly, it's pretty amazing when it comes to the music." I'm just making sure it's not an emergency. Thank you. And so she volunteered to sing for us, and I'm like, "I love it." And so she's like, "Can I sing?" I forget which hymn she asked me. I'm like, "Nah, we don't really need that." I'm like, and so I had offered for her to sing a different song, and she's like, "Okay, maybe when I get a chance." Any event, this time I went around and I said, "Hey, why don't you come out and sing for us at the Church of Korihor, and you sing whatever you want." And she's like, "Okay." I'm like, and she's like, I said, so I told her about the event, and she was very excited, very excited. So you want to come out and hear Megan Connor perform in person with us? I would be very excited to have you here. Otherwise, please put it on your calendar. We'll start the event at 1 p.m. Utah time. That's Mountain Standard Time on the 22nd of February. Yes, we will stream it live here. It'll also be streamed live on Megan's channel that she has with Kirsten. I'm sure you're familiar with Kirsten and Megan. If not, you should get familiar with them. Great little channel, fun little snarky channel that they have. They have a show they do called Exmo Snarky Exmo or something like that. And anyways, I've been on it once and we had a blast. Great couple of women. Anyways, very excited. So put that on your calendar. Plan to be here. And otherwise, today we are going to sermonize about divorce. I've been featuring on TikTok some content in the last few days, returning to this subject of how we are going to soon start. We are soon going to start scheduling sacraments of what we call the uncoupling. Lots of religions and churches out there have a ceremony for your first haircut, for circumcision, for baptism, for days when you eat things, days that you don't eat things, days where you eat nothing, days for remembering this and days for remembering that, and it's all valid and good. I'm not saying it's not, but one of the few rites of passage that I think that there's a huge deficit in the spiritual world of gods is the fact that there isn't a process for committing to the spiritual renewal that comes with divorce, because divorce was an idea really invented in defiance to religion, in of most religions. Though divorce has been practiced in various forms, pagans had rituals for divorce, or processes at least for divorce. Of course, even Christians have had processes for divorce, even though Jesus was against divorce. And well, at least the Jesus in the Bible, who knows who that guy even was, but according to Thomas Aquinas, I'm very convinced that the Jesus people believe in these days is actually Thomas Aquinas, but you can't bring that up to them. They get sensitive about stuff. But and he was definitely against. He was against sex. He was against everything. Thomas Aquinas was a dick. I'm sorry. You really get into the story of Thomas Aquinas. He was a dick. Anyway, uh, but divorce, it made sense in a day and age where people didn't live past the age of 40 or 50, that religions would tell you, don't plan on ever getting divorced. You got married, stick it out, and bring lots of babies into the world who will all be born into our faith. And for churches that run on tithing money, that makes sense, because that's where their power comes from. That's where their money comes from. That is their whole value in existence for the God churches, especially the Jesus churches. It all comes from making sure that people who get married in their churches pay them for the privilege of being married in their churches, and then pay them tithing, and bring children into the church who will be expected to be baptized from the moment they're born, or as near there as possible, and and then be confirmed as young as possible, and start paying tithing to the church from the moment they start earning money. I mean, you can see why in those organizations there's no way you have time or money to get divorced, friends. But the Church of Korihor sustains itself on annual contributions of $48 or monthly contributions of $4. We're very happy to celebrate your divorce with you. And so, but with men, when we talk about this in the past, in the uncoupling, we have generally talked about it from the perspective of women, and how women especially have a right to be angry, how women have a right to reclaim their lives, and to choose to no longer be burdened with the labor requirements, including emotional labor requirements of supporting a man. And I've loved every minute of it, even though I am a man, have been a man all my life, probably will be all my life. Um, you know, I'm allowing myself the gender expression that expresses naturally. And generally speaking, I'm very happy with my masculinity, even though everybody who knows me seems to celebrate my feminine side. I get this a lot, and I'm like, so tell me about this feminine side of mine, as if I don't know. Of course, I know my feminine side, but women especially will tell me, oh yeah, Joe, when you say this, when you do this, and this, I'm like, oh, it makes me, and then gay men very much attuned to this side, even though they're not attracted to the femininity of me. It doesn't seem. I do get hit on by dudes. I'll just say that. I'll just get hit on by dudes who are convinced I'm not like other guys. So whatever. I love all of you. I love you just the way you are. But as I have to just explain to more and more people, for whatever reason, I'm not going to fuck all of you. It's just not going to happen. I have standards what to do with my professionalism. I'll talk about sex. But we're not all gonna do it. In any event, but some of you know that back in October, I left my family's home. That is to say, not my family of origin. Ironically, I more or less moved back in with my family of origin down here in St. George. But I left my family's home in American Fork as my wife, Molly, at the time, and I had planned. It last December completed 20 years that we had since the day we married on December 10th, 2005. Um, it had been 1 year that my wife had told since my wife had told me that even though my she expressed to me that she was impressed with my having healed a lot of my toxic masculinity and that I still had some work to go. She had reached a point in life where she was ready to heal from the anger of men in her life, ranging from the household she grew up in to now and looking to her future. And frankly, I was in the way. And I thought at first that when she explained this to me, that she wanted me to move out of the house. And she thought the children would be better off without me in the house. I was concerned for a moment as somebody who had healed my masculinity, but knew I had some work to do, that I would become angry, and was surprised to find that I wasn't angry. I was hurt, but also it felt right. It felt like our relationship had come to this ebbing, this moment where we had to deal with things that had not been addressed in our marriage. And I told her that was fine, that we would plan on that. It was a few weeks of carefully planning before I realized I had to come clean with the next phase of that, which is to explain to her in my book, our being polyamorous, which means that we are not exclusive to each other, which we still are both polyam, and she's free to do what she wants, of course. I am free to do what I want, and afford myself that freedom. And it had been at that point 7 years when we made this discovery. We had this discussion that we had decided we would both start seeing other people and open up our marriage officially. And checking for emergencies, no emergency. And and I said, if we're both polyam and we don't live together, and as we had recently started to talk about, we were going to separate our finances so that her paycheck goes to her, my paycheck gets separated over here, and that and we would negotiate how to combine when it comes to supporting the kids. I said, that's divorce. That's divorce, what that is. And finally, I just told her, I'm like, this is what we're talking about here is not separation. What we're talking about here is divorce. And I feel like you'll never say that because that feels like a failure for you. But that's not failure on my side, on my perspective. People get divorced. And I feel like calling it something else is stopping me from my spiritual progress. And pretending that it's separation and not divorce is going to hurt the kids. And so I said, and I'm not willing to do that. So I want to divorce. And that hurt her a lot. And I knew it would, but it was the right thing to do in my perspective. And so I chose to keep communication as open as I could with her and with the kids, so that we could transition towards this as peacefully as we could and within as a way that was as healthy as possible for all of us as we could be. And I said, let's plan on that in the fall, some point in the fall, after we have separated everything out. I will move to Virginia, where my partner Winter lives, and I will go be with him, and then just come back to be with the kids, spend time with the kids as best we can, and navigate, day by day, month after month, try to figure out what does our time together look like? Does that involve kids moving in with me, staying with her? We would negotiate that, as things develop naturally. And so that was the plan. I said, look, if we still love each other enough to say, I care about you, we care about each other, we all care about the kids care about us, and we want what's healthy for everybody else. If everybody could commit to it, this could be the best thing for us at this stage in our life. And frankly, it could be the best thing for us for our futures. And I tried to express to Molly so many times, Molly's my ex, that I want what's best for you. This started with you saying you wanted to heal toxic masculinity and anger, particularly in your life. And I want that for you. And if I'm in your way and you just can't say that, you can't bring yourself because you love me enough to not want to hurt me, but you had the courage enough to say, I do need space away from you. And it needs to permanently be that way. I respect that space. And frankly, it gives me the room to have that breakage for me, and for me to look inwardly and say, Joe needs to work on him and needs to work on himself and be all right with not being married and deal with those feelings as they are, and take some time off, take some time away from that kind of committed relationship. And at 45 years old, I thought, that's time. Yeah, I feel it. I feel like it's time, like it's a good moment. And frankly, I think it was probably a while that it was coming, and that she avoided it pretty much just because of my tendency towards anger towards myself, knowing that I would blame myself and that it might not be entirely safe for me. And I hate to think that she would avoid telling me what space she needed because she was afraid of what I would do even to myself. When I started to really heal my self hatred about 5 years ago and work aggressively on it. Um Diana, that's rough. Thanks for sharing that, Diana. Everybody's welcome, by the way, to share in the comments there. As I started to work on myself here, I began to realize how extremely important this was for me as a person, and how lucky I was to have a support structure of people who checked in on me, because I thought I didn't really exist for me. I have the Church of Korihor, but I thought these are people who attend my services. These are people who are part of our community, but they don't really want to get caught up in my personal business. So when I didn't show up for a couple of weeks to Godless sermons because um, I thought, because yeah, it turned out to be very difficult to live out of my van because I was living technically out of my van. Um, After I didn't show up for a couple of weeks, people started messaging me asking me if I was okay. And I thought, really? Wow, I have people around me who care. I mean, I know that you guys care. I know that my friends care. I have friends going back 20, 30 years I still stay in touch with, just a handful. And almost all of them reached out to me. Hey, are you all right? And I said, yeah. Why do you ask? And they're like, well, you didn't show up to Godless sermons and you're not promoting your work with the Church of Korihor. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's proving to be a little bit difficult right now because I'm living out of my van. And they're like, you're what? Oh yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, I live with Winter kind of. I live on Winter's property, and then my folks down in St. George, they've offered to help me out when I'm out back here, and then I still get time with the kids when I'm up in Utah County. I've got a roof over my head everywhere I go, and I got family who are reaching out to me and taking care of me, and I do. I have two siblings who have gone out of their way to help me. They're really amazing people, my siblings, two of them. Uh, and my Mormon parents have been outstanding, supportive, and helpful to me. And then I had my partner Winter, who is amazing, and even Molly has been really, really supportive, and really been good to me in this process. And I'm overwhelmed, you guys, a little bit here. What a lucky man I am. Because I thought for sure going into this that I was going into it alone, and that Molly had just cut me loose because she needed space, and that I was going to need to rely on myself and take time to myself and take some time to rediscover myself as a being separated from this paradigm. And to some extent I did do that, and it was but I was surprised at what an amazing support system I have. And it caused me to think, holy crap, I may be discovering something. I've done all this talking about the uncoupling ceremony, mainly from the perspective of how it can help women. Very sensitive. I've been very sensitive. I try to be very sensitive to that. I don't understand what women experience as people and as women and as wives and mothers where that's the case. I don't understand the experience of gay women really at all. I am concerned about them, but I need to be open to hearing them, and I need to make opportunities to pass the mic for them to speak their truth and to speak about what needs they have, especially those who are godless. And we have this community for those who are, you know, uh, they tend very only a handful of women, some women that I very much respect, identify as atheist. You guys know my good friend Jenny Gage, without whom the Church of Korihor would not exist. I is proud to call herself an atheist, as I am proud to call myself an atheist, even though really both of us are agnostics, or just agnostics who aren't afraid of about losing friends anymore. That those people are called atheists, and uh, generally speaking. But most women who leave religion, especially Christian religion and Mormonism, as part of that, you're welcome, Mormons, tend to become agnostic or atheist, but use a label like spiritual or non-religious. And a lot of them go into, get into Wicca in a big way. They get into, and they do their witchy thing. I've said many times, I think that for a godless church, much of our future is going to be shaped by witchy women. And still, since I started advertising our work with the unsheltered, I've started to get more comments than anything. I get comments occasionally from agnostics and atheists who just paying like, I think I've been paying now, what, $400 a month in advertising on TikTok and YouTube. It needs to be more because, frankly, the work is growing so much faster now that we're paying. And I've been paying out of my pocket a little bit here to get the word out to people. And I can't tell you how amazed I am on TikTok, especially. the number of women who say, "I am a witch, but I love what you're doing. Keep up the good work." Or, "I practice Wicca," or, "I practice neo-paganism." And they say, "And I think it's amazing what you're what you're doing." I've even had a couple of people who've weighed in with, as a Satanist, I want to let you know that I think what you're doing is amazing. And it's like, wow, proper Satanist or just like temple of Satan, a satanic temple, which if you don't know, satanic temple people are just atheists. They just, they like we use Korahor, they use Satan at the satanic temple. They admit that he's fictional. Hmm. Um, but the curious thing is, as I personally experienced divorce and started recording my experience with divorce and getting people sending, I recently discovered that a woman that my ex-wife was has been dating for some years now, found a TikTok video I had recorded about, I guess I'm supposed to, if I'm being intellectually honest, I should be sharing my divorce journey, and talked about how painful it was in this TikTok video. I talked about how painful it was for me, and yet a necessary kind of painful. That I saw my wife post on Facebook, um, that ever since she got divorced, ever since we filed the paperwork for our divorce, that she felt so much more free. And to be self aware enough to realize in that process of seeing that and acknowledging that freedom was such a mixed feeling, because as someone that I love that for her. I love that she is free, that she feels free. And to also hold space to let spill over from that the feeling that goes, "Dummy, she's free of you." At least I'm laughing about it, right? And it's like, if I look at that, but that spillover is she's free of me. Does that hurt? Oh yeah. Yeah, that hurts. Yeah. It brings up a lot of questions. Brings up a lot of questions of what she felt about what I feel. And more importantly, was I keeping her from expressing her feelings? Did I do that? And even if I didn't do anything for that, am I responsible for the fact that she couldn't express how much she wanted to be free of me? Did I, you know, and learning to take responsibility, a lot of it has been, for me, has been about learning to take responsibility for things I didn't do, and saying, it may not seem fair, but the outcome of what happens in her experience is the effect of what I do and don't do. And the things I don't do, I am as much responsible for as the things I do, because that's what love really is. For me, in where I am, that meant that the more I gave space to her to process this in her way, and hope that she will process it in a healthy way, meant that I loved my ex-wife. I'll never forget, it was while we were in the hospital with the birth of my son, my youngest. I had done a this was 10 years ago. On my old website, back when I was just an author, just when I was the author of the Korahor argument and trying to promote the Korahor argument, I had done a small informal poll that was very badly organized. I admit that now, in which I asked people who were divorced, ex-Mormons who were divorced, why they left their marriage, if they left their church at the same time that they left their marriage, who initiated both of those, and why, and what were the feelings they had towards their spouse after leaving the church and keep and after leaving the marriage. In any event, I was overwhelmed by the amount of responses I got, and especially from men who said, "I still love my ex-wife, and I can't tell anyone." And I remember telling Molly about that while we were sitting there with our newborn baby boy. I'm like, "Do you wanna hear something that's just the saddest, sweetest thing you've ever heard?" And she's like, "Sure." I'm like, "Do you really want to?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I told her that, and it was, like, crushing and yet beautiful at the same time. And I was like she's like, "As long as they're not stalking them." I'm like, "Yeah, let's hope. Good gosh." But the idea, it just never really I mean, I guess maybe it makes sense when you think about it, but you don't really think about it, that people can be divorced and still be in love with the person they're divorced from, and how painful that must be. How important it is in that moment to be able to say, "Man, you gotta cut that cord," You can't just be tagging along. And you can love a person. Of course, you can love a friend. You can love somebody you're not married to. You can love a person you're not intimate with. You can love somebody and support them, but there's not really a lot of models in life for that being your ex. And you can also hate them and not forgive them. And I made a video just yesterday about the uncoupling, in which I said, you know, part of this for me is that, as Christians say that you should forgive everybody, which means that you should forgive even your enemies. You should forgive even your the people who hurt you. But we're not Christians at the Church of Korihor at all. People compare me to. I'm surprised since I started the Church of Korihor and started doing these things, how many people compare me to Christ. It's a little bit like I'm not going to get in people's face about it and say, "Don't say that shit about me." Blah 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 blah. They mean it as a compliment, and so I'm just like, okay. And so I you normally just respond and say, "All right, I'll take it. I know you mean well. I know you mean that as a compliment, so I'll just take it." But I'm not a fan of Jesus Christ. I'm not a fan of Jesus of Nazareth. That's not just a snarky thing. That's not just an angry ex-Mormon thing. No, I mean theologically speaking, philosophically speaking, I read the teachings of Jesus and I just have to wag my head and go, "This guy is not got it." This guy, if I could if I could get some healing for any mythological creature in history, it would be Jesus of Nazareth. I'd be like, "Dude, get your shit together, because like you've got issues, man." I read the Gospels in English, and I'm blown away that people think this guy is so wise. I'm like, I don't know about that. Maybe that's just because I started out benefiting from his wisdom, and maybe I don't realize what a good starting point that was for my personal philosophy. I feel like we give this guy way too much credit. In any event, um, I feel like it was important at that time. Oh, but I mentioned yesterday in this video I published that's getting some attention, not nearly as much as I would like. It's okay to hate your ex-spouse. It's okay, especially when that person has abused you, to just be angry at them and to decide that before you can forgive them, if you forgive them, that you're just going to hate them for a while. And if that's part of your journey, then that's part of it. You don't have to forgive them. That's not required. But if you're going to carry around resentment for another person, you're going to have to work that into the identity of who you are. If that is, look, I am a person who assists other people in getting out of bad toxic relationships, because I hate my ex, partner, my ex-spouse, well, then that's it. That's a part of your story. And that might be toxic, but then again, it might not be. It might be, and it might be temporary. It might just be what you do for right now, and you're coming around to a healthier place for you in the long run. But the fact of the matter is that nobody lives forever, and you can't stay stuck. You got to move forward. And so that's why I think the uncoupling is going to be once especially as we figure it out. And at first, it's going to be a little bit, don't worry, be crappy. I think I've talked to you guys about this in the past, about this idea of failing forward or don't worry, be crappy. Let the first ones be a little bit shitty. Let it be a little bit unpracticed, unpolished, and a little bit of people going, seems like you guys don't really know what you're doing. Oh, yeah, lean into that energy, I suggest. No, I full on say, let's lean into that. Yeah, we don't know what we're doing. We're figuring it out, though. We are committed to figuring it out. If I gave up as soon as I realized, as soon as I felt embarrassed about shit, I don't really know what I'm doing here. If I'd given up on the Church of Korihor the first time that I said, "Oh no, I don't know what I'm doing," it would have been over a year ago. It would have been right off the bat when I didn't realize I didn't know how to make a bank account for a nonprofit organization. It turns out it's a little harder than you think. Or I didn't realize how difficult I didn't realize how easy it was to put together the paperwork. I didn't realize how difficult it was. How I didn't realize how easy it was to get the IRS EIN number. That was like I'd done it before for for-profit businesses, for LLCs I've started, but I'd never done it for a nonprofit. I was shocked how easy it was to start a nonprofit, how much more difficult it was to do everything else related to starting a business that is a nonprofit business and a church. And but in the process of this whole transition, I realized that for men particularly, there's no model for what it looks like for a man to, in a healthy way, transition from being married to unmarried in our society. And that is the reason why almost every man I know who's gotten divorced has basically had to invent his own role model. He has had to become his own role model. And it's extremely difficult. And I said, what if we were to what if I were to look more deeply into what does it look like for men to deconstruct and to address the crises that we experience as in an uncoupling. And before I got divorced, I didn't really think I could speak to that personally. And so I started looking into, feeling out for myself, what is my spiritual path? What is my journey? And how can I share that? And how can I relate that to the research I've been doing in what men need when they get divorced? And I come to discover this. Well, let me tell you what I did, first of all. I decided a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago, that part of my healing ceremony, part of my spiritual growth personally, was that I was going to express for my own benefit and no one else's in music, because that's becoming a bigger part not only of the Church of Korihor, but of my personal journey. Um, how I feel sincerely about my ex-wife's journey. And the thing that I don't think gets enough attention, if it's something other men are experiencing like me, to put it out into the world in case other people experience, and other men, particularly straight men, arguably straight men, could express to the women who gave them so many years of their lives, who gave us their labor, gave us their sacrifice, gave us the opportunity to grow alongside them as they grow, to witness what it was like for a young woman to become, in some cases, a mother, or in some cases, to become a grandmother. What a privilege it was, and how instead of being resentful about it, about her deciding or our choosing to move on, um, how excited you could be for her. And so I wrote a song called "The Girl I Remember," and I put up the Suno on my Facebook, and I figured, there, that's it. I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna do anything else with it. And for me, just writing it and creating it, and then just putting it out there for my little network of friends, just my little group of people on Facebook to see, was enough for me. And then I just said it and forgot about it. Figured, and I didn't hear anything from my ex-wife about it. Figured that's probably because she doesn't check my Facebook. Um, Actually, for a while since before the divorce, I think she stopped looking at my Facebook posts or hiding them or whatever. So, in the weeks since, it turns out, last weekend I went up to Utah County to spend some time with my kids because they needed help, and my wife was out on a date. My ex-wife was out on a date, and the date ended earlier than she expected, and she was a little frustrated and pissed off because, here I was giving her a break and chance to where I was with the kids, and the kids had gone to bed, and she was out, and her date had ended early. And so I told her, and so I texted her and I said, well, you want to go grab a drink with me? And she said, okay, sure. And so we met up at a place where we used to go out and get drinks when we were married. We just sat there and talked about our lives and things, and we just were there in the energy of the people that we've always been. And it was nice. It was nice to spend some time with my ex. And very quickly figured out, oh wow, yeah, it's probably a good thing we don't do this anymore regularly. Pretty quickly figured that out. It's like, yeah, yeah. But it was nice while it was lasted. It was nice for an hour or two. And I told her about this song. I said, did you ever listen to The Girl I Remember?" And she's like, "No, what's that?" And I said, it's a song I wrote about you." I said, "And I figured you probably wouldn't see it because you don't check, because you like hide my Facebook posts or whatever, or you don't, whatever. You don't look at my stuff." But my mom found it, and it made her cry. And she goes, "No way." And she's like, "How come you didn't send it to me?" And I said, "That wasn't part of it for me. The whole point of it was not to do it for you, it was to do it for me." And she's like, "I wanna hear it." And I'm like, You're welcome to listen to it. I'm not gonna tell you you can't." She's like, "Oh, yeah." And so anyway, it was the next day I had driven back down here, and I get a text from her saying, "Is this the song?" And she had found "Love's Labor Lost," which I had recently just published. And I was like, "No." And she's like, "This one I relate to." I said, "Ouch, that one hurts because Love's Labor Lost is, yeah, it's about a woman being angry that with her a husband, her soon to be ex-husband, not doing anything." And I'm like, "Ouch, okay. But you're welcome to feel that way." And she's like, "So which song is it?" I said, "It's The Girl I Remember." And I'm like, "Oh, I'll send it to you." So I sent her the song, and I got a text from my daughter, Scarlett, who's 19. And she said, "Dad, what did you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, shit." And she's like, "Mom is bawling her eyes out right now listening to something you made." And I'm like, "She's okay. And she's like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "She's fine." And of course, I got a text from Molly immediately following that that said, "I'm sitting here crying my eyes out." I said, "Yeah, I know. I already got the report from Scarlett." And she's like, "This song is gorgeous." I said, "I'm glad you think so. I really did write it for me, even though it really is about you and it really is dedicated to you." And I said, "And it was really important for me to get that out." I think that an uncoupling might include writing a song. I think that might be a good part of the process. In any event, I decided to make it into whoops. Sorry. In any event, I decided to make it into a hymn of the Church of Korihor. So our newest godless hymn, I would like to play for you. I haven't reviewed it for quality, so it may be crappy. Where is this? Korihor. This is our newest godless hymn, maybe. Where are you? Did I put it on the desktop? Put it on the desktop. The Girl I Remember. We're giving it a try. We'll see. I haven't reviewed this for quality. I'll take it down. We'll never speak of it again if it turns out that that's I should have done more quality assurance on it. So now, without further ado, and without my rambling on, The Girl I Remember.
In a church that I'd left, your mother's plastic ivy, your sister's borrowed dress, and goddess that I'd met only a few weeks before. And 2 decades later, I couldn't love her more. That maiden grew into a woman with my name for the part I played. I won't ever be ashamed. What I want for you is to be yourself. May our precious years be treasured on the shelf. What I want for you is what I want for me. Let the girl I remember become who she's meant to be. We were only children, soon to have our own. I nearly lost you both, fear I'd never known. Fatherhood made me brave, added 2 children more. The maiden I had married became a mother I adored. She supported my dreams. Life had different plans, but her patience and love made me a better man. What I want for you is to be yourself. May our precious years be treasured on the shelf. What I want for you is what I want for me. Let the girl I remember become who she's meant to be. I won't hold you back, I cannot change for you. Tell that girl's story written in your truth. Don't think that I forgot your sister's borrowed gown, how I wept like a child as we swore those vows. I was privileged to watch you grow away from me. The person you'll become is who that girl was meant to be.
So that was that. And it was good. I want to share you something. I want to share something with you guys now. So where I'm going to add this into the stage. This is a Reddit. Hopefully you guys can hear this video, and hopefully I try not to play videos anymore on our live streams on YouTube because I get punished by YouTube for it, or I did last week. But this is a video. Hopefully we don't get taken down. If we get taken down, as always, I'll just relaunch with a new one, a new stream. We did that last time and it was a pain in the ass. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen again. In any event, this is a video you may have seen before, but then again, maybe not. I've seen it many times. The algorithm feeds it up to me in TikTok, in YouTube, wherever it comes up, this video. And it's somewhat comically and tragically known as "Would you guys be there for me?" And it is a gaming video. I don't do much gaming. I'm not a gamer. But for a lot of men, gaming is a big part of, well, their whole life, right? So I wanted to share it with you. So this is the thing. This is it.
Would you guys be there for me if I was going through something?
No. Nope. Absolutely not.
I hope it sucks whatever you're going through.
I hope it sucks.
What the fuck?
I hope it emotionally scars you for the rest of your life.
I hope you reach out to me so I can ignore you. I can't wait to go to your funeral knowing that I could have changed that outcome.
Oh, man, what the hell?
Real quick.
I was just asking if you would be there for me.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Let me explain. I did have a reason for doing this. You see, I'm laughing here. If you are not a man, maybe this is surprising to you, but maybe it's not. That you just witnessed is what men supporting men looks like. And just hear me out. You got to realize, for me, from my perspective as a man and as somebody who has associated with quite a lot of men in my life, and very much related to what I described before, that I didn't realize the support network that I had. And I went on a long walk this morning. I've been doing a lot more walking, and realized this so beautifully encapsulates the experience of men. How's it going, Diamond Dave? Good to see you, buddy. How's Mongolia? Is that men don't have enough of a support network or among other men. Not that our support network has to only consist of men, but because it generally doesn't, or we don't think that it does, that means that women in our lives end up picking up the emotional labor for the men, even men that they're not in a relationship with. You know, of course, we all lean, as when we are married to a woman, This is, part of the toxicity of toxic masculinity that people complain about, that women particularly complain about how unfair it is that they have to pick up all the emotional labor, which is to say, all of the things that a person has to do, that a person does, sacrifices in their time and in their energy and in their effort to support the emotional well-being of somebody else. And that emotional labor, or even to support themselves, that the emotional labor of a household and a family, generally a woman, the head of the woman in that household, the matriarch or the mother or the wife, generally ends up being the one to pick it up and carry it all. And that we as men, part of our toxicity is that we generally are content with the fact that because the women in our lives are willing to do that, or that they do it, whether or not they're willing to, that they do it means, well, good, I don't have to do that. It's just one more aspect of labor, one more piece of work I don't have to do. And I have plenty on my plate as it is. So she's obviously happy with that. When, of course, if you ask them, are you happy? If we had the language as men to ask that, to say, are you content with how much of the emotional labor in our relationship you have to carry, and how much of that burden you have to shoulder? And the fact that I really don't make any effort there, but you do it all. Are you happy with that balance? Of course, if we had both the willingness, if we had the care, the consciousness, and the willingness and the language to do that and ask that, do you feel like I carry in my share of the burden? Are you happy with the amount of the burden of emotional labor that you carry? How many women, we don't do it because we're terrified of the answer, of what the answer will be. And how many marriages would be saved? How many marriages would never come into existence at all if women were able to express and had opportunities to express how sick they were of carrying all the emotional labor, in addition to ordinary labor, the chores, the work, the paycheck earning, the breadwinning? We're content to oftentimes, as couples in marriages, to just leave it unspoken. You do what are we doing? We're doing the best we can. And this is like, yeah, I am. Do you feel like you're yeah, I'm doing the best I can. Then let's not talk about it. Let's just go on. Let's go to bed. Let's just go to, let's just go on this date night. I guess we got to do date night again. I guess we got to, and our lives become exhausting and our marriages become exhausting. Is it then any wonder that we end up after 10, 15, 20 years in these roles? Even if we love each other, we can find ourselves exhausted energetically from carrying, each of us carrying the load, and not being, including carrying a load, an additional load on top of the load of not communicating that this is a lot for me, that you lean on me a lot. And so I looked into some interesting statistics about why that's particularly bad for men. I just want to state this right off the bat before I get into this. We as men need to have more conversations with other men about toxic masculinity. We've been hearing it for a long time. I have, at least, and I didn't always know how to have that conversation. And I still don't think I know how to have that conversation, but at least but I think we're going to figure it out by doing it. That we as men need to be concerned about other men, not because women don't understand, but because women are the ones doing all of it. If not all of it, most of it. And right now, you'll hear people say that there's a male loneliness epidemic. There's a great Saturday Night Live sketch that just came out about that very thing, I'm not going to show that to you, because we don't just sit here and watch movies. We talk about things. But it's, I've said many times before, and like most men, I hated the term toxic masculinity at one point in my life when people would say it. It felt like an angry thing to yell at men and to say let's shame women, or let's shame men, excuse me. To say let's shame men for being men. Let's shame men for being manly. I did that. I was one of the toxic people, one of the toxic men who then said, "Well, maybe it just seems toxic to you, but this is who we are. This is how we were raised, and we don't know how to be men that are not manly. I don't know what you want us to do." I was one of those people. Okay, until I sat down and had real conversations with people, with women particularly, and did a little reading and did a little research to realize what toxic masculinity was. Because when men get talked to about toxic masculinity, what we generally hear is the same trope over and over. We're always told boys aren't allowed to cry. We're always told that boys need to be tough. We're always told, and that's that toxic masculinity thing, or that we're not supposed to share our feelings, or things like this. And toxic masculinity is so much simpler than that, but with such a more broad application that it's no wonder that men like me would get defensive when people talk, especially women talk about toxic masculinity. And I'm going to get into that here in a minute. I just want to nail this down a little bit here with a little bit of information. There was a study done called Marital Status and Suicide in the National Longitudinal Mortality Study. This is a quote from the abstract of that study. When data were stratified by sex, it was observed that the risk of suicide among divorced men was over twice that of married men. Among women, however, there were no statistically significant differentials in the risk of suicide by marital status categories. Everybody still with me, or did the live get dropped down? I think everybody's still here. Okay. We have to be careful with the words we use. That's significant. That's significant. Okay. Part of the reason why we need to be concerned. People may joke or say, and especially women may joke and say, it doesn't matter. Good. If men end their own lives, if men take their own lives as a result of divorce, good. Who needs them? We must also let us make space here. I just wanted to point that out and say, of course somebody's going to say that. Hey, Songs. Of course somebody's going to feel that way. We require women in our relationships far too often. We as men require women to bear a burden that we generally don't acknowledge exists, or even don't know exists, or we know it exists but we don't have a name for it, don't realize that it has a name. It has a name. It's called emotional labor. I learned about it from a feminist named Kate Kelly. When I brought it up to my wife at the time, she didn't know what it was. She didn't know that's what it was called. And then when I explained it to her, I'm like, I learned this in a conversation with Kate Kelly. And she said, "Oh yeah, that's that thing that I do all of and you do none of." And it hurt. And I went, and I wanted to say, okay, you don't really seem to appreciate that I have autism and that these kinds of social conventions are difficult for me. And you don't understand that as a man, I was brought up. I'm going to stop that there before it gets more triggering than it already was, right? I wanted to do all of that. I wanted to do that. But that was the proof in me of realizing, crap, I'm part of this problem. I'm a big part of this problem. And rather than respond to it, I can take it and sit with it and process it and decide, am I going to change? I want to read you something else. There's a study called Marital History and Survival After a Heart Attack. I'll put all of these in the notes after we're done here today. That showed that married men, when they had a heart attack, were more likely to recover from a heart attack than divorced men. There's another one, an article that's on Dr. Psych Mom, a therapist, who said it was called "Why You Lose Friends After Divorce." I had read these statistics; they're somewhat spurious, and a lot of it is it's not very well researched, but it's known that 1 in 4 men, only 1 in 4 men, have multiple close friendships. And married men, when a man is a married man, especially the longer that he is married, those friends all tend to be his wife's friends, not his friends. So when men get divorced, they overwhelmingly lose most of their friends. And especially if most of those friends that they would consider friends are men. And because oftentimes, if you're monogamous, women get jealous if you have friends who are women who are not the woman you're married to, and that's part of the toxicity as well. I don't know that you can call that toxic masculinity, but I think that I do think it plays into at least the patriarchy. And maybe we'll get to that, but maybe we'll put it off for another time, that part of it. But this is a quote from that article. Men and women post-divorce seem to lose close friends and family members for different reasons. Often women take the couple friends after divorce. This is likely because women are more social than men after kids, and the couple friends may really have an add-on to the wives' friendships. May have been, excuse me, that didn't make sense. And the couple friends may have been an add-on to the wives' friendships. The women side together against her ex, and then the couple chooses to continue hanging out with the woman instead of the man. Many of the male halves of the couple friends don't necessarily care or would prefer to continue their friendship with the male, but they don't want to deal with their wives' anger. This happens especially in the case where the man was unfaithful. So we see that I think this is extremely useful insight, especially if we are going to serve men who get divorced, because uncouplings are not just going to be for women. They're going to be for men too. And they're not just going to be for straight people. We need to be able to support all these people, especially those of you who feel called like me, or whatever we're calling the calling here, but who feel compelled towards serving people with these ceremonies, and to be able to help them through, our fellow godless beings, our fellow Korahors and others, to move through a divorce in a way that provides them with spiritual growth. We need to understand this, especially for men, is that there are men, for most men out there, to get divorced, especially after a long marriage, is to lose all their friends. And that's for a very particular reason. And so I'm going to relate this. I'm going to bring this back to my personal experience and the experience that I have relating to multiple men, both who have gotten divorced and men who have never been married, and even men who are married still. This is true of just about every man I think I've ever met in my life. Gay men, straight men, bisexual men, pansexual men. It's true of just about every man I've ever known. And before I get into this, I just want to reiterate: we as men need to be able to say to other men, we as men need to be able to talk to other men about toxic masculinity. And this is what I want my fellow dudes out there to hear me say. The first victims of toxic masculinity are men and boys. The first victims of toxic masculinity are men and boys. And it's so dangerous because whether we want to or not, we end up weaponizing it against everyone. We hurt our sons with it. We hurt our nephews with it. We hurt our brothers. We hurt strangers with it. And we train them in misogyny. And from there, we hurt every woman and every girl. And we hurt everyone. The reason why toxic masculinity is dangerous is because it hurts men and boys first. And it's our responsibility. It is only in our hands to stop it. And that's what I wish somebody had explained to me about toxic masculinity before I got angry about it. I'm going to say some things now from my personal experience and from my heart to my brothers out there. And I hope that you will hear me and that you will open your mind and your heart to the possibility that I have learned something that can benefit you. And I'm not doing this just to be judgmental of you. I'm doing it from a position as somebody who has done it and has been guilty of it and is trying to do better. We can become better men without needing anyone's permission. You don't need anyone's permission in this moment to become a better man. But you must acknowledge, and I must acknowledge within ourselves as human beings and as men, that it was unfair. What happened to us. And that's why we get defensive. It was unfair. And the only thing we were armed with as boys in the face of unfairness was becoming defensive. And that meant getting angry. And it meant getting violent. Anger and violence were our armor. Anger and violence were our advantage. Anger and violence were our protectors. Because from the time we are young boys, our role models are men who were traumatized all their lives. And they looked to us and said, shit, this one's not going to make it. He's not tough enough. He puts himself in dangerous situations. He's going to be hurt. And they don't want that for us. And so with the best of intentions, they harden us. They put us in dangerous situations. and they throw us into the water of physical danger and emotional hazard and emotional danger and say, swim. You're going to die if you don't swim. They put us into the fray and said, get up, protect yourself, fight back. Nobody's coming to save you. And the women in our lives, when we grow up, far more often than not, at least it's true in my experience, it's been true of many men I have talked about, have been so traumatized by having to carry the load of men not showing up in their parenting or in their relationships, in their marriage, if there is a marriage, and not showing up for them when they needed them, that they look to us and say, shit, I'm raising one that's going to be just like them. And then they end up giving us their pep talk to us, ends up being some variation of, you need to fix yourself. You need to work on yourself. You need to not rely on me to come in because I am a woman in your life and solve all your problems. Don't be one of them. Don't be one of these men who needs a woman to come in and solve all your problems. Don't make a woman carry all this. Don't make anybody carry all this for you. Be self-reliant and protect yourself, provide for yourself, look after yourself, because no one's coming for you. Nobody's going to be there for you. It's the message that we hear. It's unfair. Some people, I think, believe that men and women behave differently. And surely that's true. But how much of that is nature and how much of it is nurture? Maybe hormones have something to do with it. Surely that seems to be the case. Maybe other physiological differences. But the thing is that there's so much variety between one woman and another woman in their physiology, and so much between one man and another man, that you can't really say all men are and all women are, and they do and behave these things, these ways. We have to acknowledge that there's something to do with it that has to do with the music we grew up with, the friends we grew up with, the social conventions, like who asks who to a date, to a dance, or who asks who out on a date, or what what is the role of the princess in the movie versus what is the role of the prince, or the knight in shining armor. What are these tropes? And we grow up, and whatever natural differences there are, whatever natural traits we have, are heavily influenced by a society that is entrenched in this patriarchy. And that patriarchy says to boys over and over again, protect yourself, because no one's going to be there for you. Whether or not it's nature, whether it is nature or it is nurture, what we're seeing is that women are more likely to come out of a divorce, yes, usually with a lot more financial problems and with a lot more work and labor, and a lot more parenting responsibilities, usually. That usually is how it happens, and usually it's unfair to what degree it happens. They're going through their own unfairness. But the one advantage they seem to have in this research, and it's a good thing, that we need as many advantages as we can have in this situation, is that women have a support network that permanences, that remains. Whereas men lose everything. We lose our social network. And the more research that I've seen go into this, and I didn't put together all statistics. I think relying on statistics gets to be dangerous. It shows that men, the mental health of men goes into a sharp decline after a divorce, usually because they don't get enough face time with friends and people, who are not intimate partners. And they don't get enough regular activity where they go out and do something that feels meaningful and makes them feel like their life is meaningful. And the fact that we don't do that, we don't have that support network, is unfair. It has nothing to do with something that we did. It has to do largely with the fact that this patriarchy taught us to think differently than it taught women to think about relying on other people and acknowledging to ourselves that we need other people. And so, as I say, the pep talk was never. I don't know any man who got a pep talk from a coach, from a counselor, from a father figure in their life that went, "Hey, Joe, you need to get out every single week and put in FaceTime with other people, just showing up regularly in person at some activity with other people, and especially with other men, just to get interaction with them on a regular basis so that you have this pattern of social activity, in-person social activity. You got to get out of the house and get into the space of other people, even if it's not to do anything significant, anything expensive, anything physical, even if it's just to show up and play a game of chess. You've got to get out there every week, and ideally multiple times a week, put in time with multiple people, so that when you are in a crisis, as you eventually assuredly will be, and you stop showing up to things, somebody thinks, "Where's Joe? Have you seen Joe? Who's seen Joe?" To create opportunities when you're in crisis and you stop showing up to things and it's too much. It's too much emotionally just to show up, so that somebody knows, reach out. Can we reach out to Joe? Because I'm concerned. I haven't heard from him. He didn't show up. That you're supposed to put in regular FaceTime with other people just so that you don't have to do anything. You can do less than you normally do when your energy is low and your trauma is overwhelming and your nervous system starts to shut down, so that there are people who recognize that you're not there and will contact you to say, "Joe, are you okay?" and bring you back and do their best to try and get you back into that network. For whatever reason, if it's nature or nurture, women seem to be better at this than we are. And I am convinced it's largely has to do with this thing, that we were taught that to be stable in your life is the highest ideal, that stability in a relationship is more important than partnership in that relationship or distribution of work. That the most important thing is she going to leave me, or is she going to cheat on me? Is she going to hit me or hurt me? Is she going to do something just to try and make me angry? Is she going to test me? Those are the things we start looking out for because we have been brought up all our lives to believe that we don't deserve help, and that to be a man is to do it all yourself, to shoulder the burden yourself and protect yourself. And so when somebody says to us, this toxic masculinity is hard on me, or it's hard on the kids, or it's hard on the people that you're working with, or it's hard on our community, our natural response is going to be to protect ourselves, because nobody ever taught us how to stabilize except by getting angry and violent. And it's the anger and violence in us that it wants to express, that we've been trained our whole life to express, that is the problem. And it's the reason why they feel unsafe. And that you don't have to hit anybody for people around you to feel unsafe. You don't have to punch a hole in a wall. That's me. You don't have to punch a hole in a wall for someone to feel unsafe. You don't have to use swearing language. You don't have to swear for someone to feel unsafe. You can simply be angry. And even if that anger in your life never resulted in you raising your hand to hit someone, that doesn't mean that that person isn't triggered because some other man did. And so when we don't heal by addressing in us, each of us in ourselves as men, that the only tools we were raised to have to make us self-reliant were anger and violence. That we were trained without anybody needing to take a course, without anybody needing to take a training, nobody needed to go to a boot camp on how to raise boys wrong. For everybody, every role model in our life, male, female, or other, to start perpetuating to us that to be a man means to protect yourself, and that means getting angry or getting violent. And then we end up hurting each other. We end up hurting the people closest to us. And the fact that we never got any other training on how to do it doesn't change the outcome. So being responsible means, instead of getting defensive and saying, well, what am I supposed to do? This is the only kind of masculinity I know. Not all men. Okay. You can do that, get defensive, but again, that is the problem. And we're all tempted to do it. At least I think we're all tempted to do it. I know I did it. And we can do better. And you don't need anybody's permission to do better. And to say, I'm going to take some time apart. I'm going to explore for myself what it means to change and become somebody who doesn't have to get angry every time he feels threatened, or violent every time he becomes threatened. I don't have to be somebody who resorts to misogynistic tropes or homophobic or transphobic slurs in order to defend his masculinity by making somebody else feel emasculated, for fear that we will be emasculated. I can't tell you how many of these videos I produce where the comments that I get, especially if I make a video about Milo Yiannopoulos or Ben Shapiro. I haven't done Ben Shapiro yet. I do a lot of videos out there criticizing religious people, religious leaders, and conservative leaders, thought leaders, and opinion leaders. So is that the term? Yeah, conservatives. Where the response I get, almost invariably, it would seem from young men, younger than me, is, yeah, well, you're fat. And I can't help but wonder every time now that I get this comment. It's almost every video I make on where I talk about conservatives. It happened recently with the Matt Walsh video that I did. Yeah, well, I made a video, as you recall, a while ago on Hellfire Agency. That's where I said, "Is Matt Walsh the most racist?" And so he made a comment about, I don't know, is this guy the most fat? And I know that in their mind, in this keyboard warrior mind, this troll, this internet troll, thinks to himself, "Oh yeah, that guy's gonna go home. He's gonna, he's gonna throw himself down on his pillow and he's gonna cry his eyes out because I pointed out that he was fat." I'm a 46-year-old man. I've been fat my whole life. Do you think I don't know that I'm fat? And yes, like most fat guys, at some point in my life, I use some other word for it. And at some point in my life, I'm sure there was a time where I would have been very upset at someone pointing out that I'm fat. But then some point between being a fat kid and being a fat man, I went, thanks, Joey. Somewhere between being a fat kid and being a fat man, I decided, who cares? And I became defensive. And I started, and I looked at it, and I looked at the circumstance and said, what kind of person goes into an intellectual conversation, an intellectual argument, and responds with, yeah, well, you're fat? And I thought, it's got to be someone, call me out if I'm wrong here. It's somebody who doesn't have a good intellectual response. It's someone who doesn't have somebody who realizes that their position in this argument is the losing side of the argument, that they don't have a good case to make. And it's probably because they're young. It's probably because they're inexperienced, haven't done a lot of reading in it. They just believed whatever Jordan B. Peterson told them, and they just took it. They just believed whatever Ben Shapiro says, and they just run with it. Or fucking Nick Fuentes. Or Milo Yiannopoulos. And they just took these toxic young males, especially. And they just take it and run with it. And as soon as they run into material that's said by somebody that says, this is not true, these men don't have very good ideas, these men should know better, and explains the reason why, they don't know anything else. So they resort to what they know. They get defensive, and they don't know how to argue intellectually because they just believed whatever they were told that confirmed what they already believed. And so what do? They resort to, yeah, well, you're fat. Really? Is that all you got? Throw me a your mom one. Throw me, okay. That's not, your mom's got toxic masculinity all over her face. Go on, give me another one. And usually I just respond to these. If I respond at all, I throw back a toxic masculine comment at them, hoping that somebody will respond and say, wow, that was really mean. And so that I can start a conversation, hopefully with somebody and say, do you see? Do you see how it just perpetuates the problem? Throw out a gay comment. That's so gay. Does that make sense? No. Why do you say it? Why say it? Why is that the answer? Why not come up with an intelligent response? You're just so gay. What is that supposed to mean? Why gay exactly? Because we've been brought up in a patriarchal system where to not chase women, to not be sexually attracted to women, and to not compete for women because you're gay or for whatever reason is a sign that you is emasculating. It's a sign you're not a man. A man would go out there and get the girl. And somebody who is gay is never really a man in that perspective, in the patriarchal system. And so it becomes that becomes the way the homophobic slur, the transphobic slur, even racist slurs. Remember that in slavery, one of the ways that white men generally, because there were men who owned slaves who themselves were not white, so such a minority of people, it doesn't even really matter. But okay, acknowledged. Okay, when white men would subjugate black men who were slaves, they'd say, what did they call them? They called them boy. And to this day, black men who have never been slaves, some of them black men whose ancestors were never slaves, when they hear that word, a normal word for so many of us, when they hear that word, it is triggering. It carries a hurtful message because it is about emasculating someone. It's about taking their masculinity away and taking it away. But because we can't address it internally and say, that doesn't mean you have to get defensive right now. Somebody said it to you. That doesn't mean you have to be defensive. Because we can't say, listen, you don't have to respond to every attack from every person. You don't have to let every person who tries to emasculate you with a slur or with an insult or with body shaming. How many times do we hear, oh, there you go, little dick guy over there, little dick guy over there. There he goes off with his little dick feelings. How many times do we hear this? Even progressive people do it. We all do this body shaming thing. How many people have made a comment about Donald Trump's penis? It's funny. We make jokes about it. But when somebody points out and laughs and says, is it not body shaming? Why? Because body shaming is only hurtful when it's about girls, right? Because only girls get eating disorders. Only girls become fixated on getting plastic surgery to change their bodies. Only girls experience it. Only women experience that. Men don't do it too? Come on. Of course they do. We do. Of course it hurts. You wouldn't say it if it didn't hurt. It wouldn't be funny. We wouldn't be laughing about it if it didn't hurt. The difference is that with men, it's socially acceptable to do. I'm going to tell you something that occurs to me, and this is how we're winding up here. That occurred to me when I thought that we should do a godless sermon on this very point. It occurred to me that women have been, however this has happened for them, whether it's nature or nurture, whether it's women looking out for other women, however it happens for women, I'm sure I don't know. Women learn to advocate for men, and they learn to advocate for themselves, and they learn to advocate for men. And even though women end up bearing all the emotional labor, and what we see is that in a marriage, a man benefits from being married in a way that a woman does not. And for many of us, it's because being married to a woman was the first time in our lives where a person stood up for us, or at least the first time since our childhood, that there was a person who stood up for us and sometimes stood up to us as men and said, he's a good man. He deserves to live. He deserves to be okay. We learned how to defend ourselves and protect ourselves with anger and violence. What we didn't learn as boys was to advocate for ourselves. What we didn't learn as boys is to network for ourselves and to build a support structure so that when we move from one status in life to another, whether that's from married to divorced, whether that's from employed to unemployed, whether that's from living in this city to living in that city, whether it's from famous to canceled, whatever it may be, the transitions that happen in our life that are certainly going to happen and guaranteed going to happen in our lives. Somebody, when we drop out and stop showing up to things, somebody says, hey, where's Tyson? Have you guys talked to Tyson lately? Hey, where's Hyde? Has anybody seen Jackson? Where's Jeff? Has anybody talked to Jeff? I heard he was going through something. Does anybody know what happened to Josh? If we can't do it for ourselves, we wind up requiring women to do it. And the fact that it wasn't fair for us, that we didn't get the training, we didn't get the tools, is not important in that situation. It feels important. And certainly it is unfair. But it's not fair for women to pick it up for us. And it's not fair that women end up in relationships with us long after it would have been better and healthier for them to move on, or to insist that we be aware that we need to change if we're going to keep this relationship, or to communicate, be able and feel confident and safe to communicate with us so that if this relationship is worth saving, we can save it. We can put in the work and do it. We can do the counseling, do whatever it takes, make the changes. If they never feel safe to do it, that's not fair to them either. To require them to do something, put in the extra work. So it's unfair to you. It's unfair to her. What do you do? Does everybody throw their hands up and say, well, then nobody's responsible to do anything about it? Being responsible isn't just taking responsibility for your bad actions or for your mistakes or for your shortcomings. Sometimes it's stepping up when it's unfair and going, this is totally unfair, but it hurts you. So I'm going to make the difference up. I'm going to rise to the occasion, not because I am a man, but because I am a human being. And I care about you. And I care about these people that we have in our life. And I'm not going to perpetuate the damage that was done to me. What happened to you, my brother, was unfair. That doesn't mean that you aren't responsible for it. And that sucks. It sucked for me. It sucks for you. But neither of us are doing better by throwing it on to women, throwing it on to our children, throwing it on to the people that we work with, throwing it on to groups. And I feel like it's so pertinent right now in our society because how many men who have been hurt by this toxic masculinity that we were raised with were told that they could get paid an extra $50,000 signing bonus to put on a mask and a gun and some body armor and go out onto the streets, go door to door, and work for the government, throwing people out of this country and not giving a shit why they're here, not caring how many of them didn't do anything wrong, and then wound up with a woman in a parked car. In a stopped car, not hurting anyone, looks at you and says, I'm not mad at you, dude. Take a gun, shoot her, and stomp away, saying, fucking bitch. If we could heal as men, we could save women's lives simply by understanding you don't have to do anything because you feel threatened, because you're worried about being emasculated in some way. You don't have to do anything about it. You can stop. You can just stop and say, this person doesn't have the power to make me feel like I'm not a man. And certainly not a person, an unarmed person sitting in her car, causing harm to no one. Certainly not. I'll tell you how discouraged and how disheartened I was when they were talking about Alex Preddy on a Mormon podcast, a Mormon show recently, these men talking about it. And one of them mentions, so I'm not going to mention their names because I've done enough. I've done enough of platforming these immature boys. Said, can we even start with the fact that he's a male nurse? And then they start laughing. Remember that video I showed you earlier? Hey, if I told you guys I was going through something, would you be there for me? No. I hope it sucks, whatever you're going through. This is our support system as men, because we were brought up to believe that you don't advocate for yourself because that's emasculating. That you need to defend yourself, and that means to get violent or angry. And that's it. Alex Preddy was a male nurse. Can we talk about the fact that he was a male nurse who served veterans? Can we talk about the fact that Alex Preddy was a male nurse whose first advocates out there on the streets holding signs were his brothers and sisters in the union that he belonged to, his coworkers, that they had his funeral just 2 days ago. They had his funeral in the chapel of the hospital. That somebody went to his patients and said, "I got to tell you something about about the nurse who comes in and takes care of you. He's not coming back." But no, a nurse is a girl's job. So let's emasculate a dead man. I get that divorce kills men. I get that men who get divorced become markedly more likely in the first couple of years to take up a serious drinking habit. Men live shorter lives than women, generally speaking, and especially divorced men. That's true. But not because our lives are shorter, not because our bodies don't last as long. It's because we die younger. Because at the age of 40 to 50, men start getting markedly higher risk of heart disease, markedly higher risk of mental illness, and markedly higher risk of suicide between the ages of 40 and 50. Interestingly enough, at that same age, you look at there's a statistic, I didn't screenshot it, and so just take my word for it. I'll put it in the show notes afterwards. That shows that between the ages of 20 in the ages of 20 to 30, men tend to spike in terms of their interest in getting married when women are just starting to accelerate their interest in getting married. Between the ages of 30 and 40, men who had a dip in their late 20s and decided in their late 20s, oh, maybe I won't get married. Maybe I won't do it right now. Let me, look into my career. Maybe I'll, play the field, sow my wild oats, whatever the reason may be. And then suddenly in their 30s, men start realizing, oh crap, if I'm ever going to have a family, if I'm going to become a father, if I'm going to have the white picket fence, if I'm going to have I better find somebody to settle down with. Right at the time when for women in their mid 30s, the interest in getting married starts to level off. And by the time you get to 40, both men and women, the interest in getting married drops sharply off. And by 50 or 60, it's almost non-existent. The people who've never been married don't want to get married. The ones men who get remarried are rarely widowers. They're usually divorced men, and it's usually right away. They go out there, they find someone, likely someone younger, because again, someone their own age. Well, likely because they, for toxic a-hole reasons, but also the women who are more likely to be urgently looking for a husband when you're in your 40s and 50s are going to be women again in their 20s and 30s, or 20s to early 30s especially. And so these men start looking for these younger women for very logical reasons that are shocking and disturbing. Men's physical health when they are married drops off. The physical health of men drops off significantly when they get divorced, because while they were married, it was their wife who made sure that they were eating better. It's their wife who made sure that they took their medication. It's their wife who made sure that they were getting exercise. It's their wife who made sure that they were taking vacation time if they were. That in relationships where one spouse does what they call health monitoring of the other spouse, it's almost always the wife taking care of the husband, and the husband has no idea. That once again, remember what I said. When we were married, for so many men like myself, being married was the first time in our life where someone was advocating for us. Because we didn't learn to advocate for ourselves. We only learned to defend ourselves. And we were brought up by traumatized men who were worried that we couldn't protect ourselves. We were brought up by traumatized women who were worried that we'd just become a burden on a woman. And we'd end up doing those both, being traumatized and hurt, especially by other men, and becoming reliant on women to take care of us. And never having had the tools to say, my brother, my brother in reason, you deserve to be alive if anybody does. And if you are toxic, if you are a toxic male, and you say to yourself, does that mean I don't deserve to be alive? No, it does not. You deserve to be alive. You don't have to do anything. Oh, but I was brought up with the wrong kind of masculinity. We all were. If anybody deserves to be alive, you deserve to be alive. There's no rules. There's no God. There's no value system that determines, well, there are some men who were raised the wrong way, have the wrong values, so they deserve not to live anymore. It's not real. That's a hierarchy that doesn't exist. So I wish I would tell you, my brothers out there, especially if you are facing divorce, or especially you young men out there, if you ever see this, who are wondering to yourself if you'll ever get married, who are wondering if you will ever find a woman who's willing to put up with your shit. And especially if if you have this idea in your head that you're going to find a woman who's willing to overlook all your shortcomings and all your problems and all of your toxicity and say, that's the one I want to put babies into my body and incubate them with him and raise these babies with him. You need to take some time and look to yourself and say, you don't have to have that to be worth something. You don't need another person in your life to validate that you are a man. And you don't need somebody else in your life to advocate for you and to monitor your health and to monitor your mental health and to monitor your well-being. You don't have to wait for somebody else to step in and fill that role for you. That is your role already. And it's lovely when you have somebody in life who steps in and fills that role for you. It is nice. If you're wondering if it's nice to have a woman who takes care of you, I did it for 20 years and it was one of the best things I did in my life. It was stupidly unfair to her. And to choose to do better from now to the future only requires for me to say, I'm going to do better. I know more than one woman, especially among divorced women, who I've heard say something to the effect of, all men can die. would be much better off if all the women stopped giving their bodies, stopped giving sex, stopped giving attention, stopped giving affection to men, just become lesbians and just let the men die. I know grown adult women who say these things. And I don't get angry. And I wish I could tell more men out there. I wish we could all, as men, say to each other, do you realize what they've been through? We were traumatized as boys, every single one of us. But they were traumatized also. They were traumatized as women and girls. And then they got into relationships with men, those that did, and were traumatized again. And it was almost universal. And, you know, I've mentioned before, I was reading a book called The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, who is a feminist and a woman of color. And she had this passage. She talks about the experience. Just checking to make sure this is not an emergency. From a woman who said that when she was out working with her father on her father's ranch, and he had a heart attack, and she went and she ran to him, and she got on her phone and called 911, and she held on to her father. They told her, prop him up so he can breathe and hold on to him until we can get an ambulance there. And her father died in her arms, waiting for an ambulance. And she said that it was as her father was dying in her arms. It was the first time in her life that she felt like she had permission to touch his body in an affectionate way. Could not have physical intimacy with her own father. And she said in the book, she said, it was hard for me to contemplate that for women and children, most of us are waiting for the men in our lives to die. And I didn't want to believe it at first because it resonated so much with me. I said, this is surely going to confirm my confirmation bias, because my greatest fear in life was that my wife and children were waiting for me to die. And if I were convinced that it were true, I'd do it. Because I don't know if I've expressed this before, for a guy who founded a church whose motto or whose creed is, we make lives worth living. It's an uphill battle for me because personally, if I may be quite intimate with you, I don't like being alive. I don't like it. Being alive has been hard on me. And I feel a lot of guilt having brought more people into the world with the genes that made me. But when I look back on it now, the choice to get married and to have children and to continue having children and to raise these children, I didn't always understand why I was doing it. It seemed the right thing to do. I loved this woman. I wanted to give her everything that I could give her in life. I wanted to see, I wanted to know the family that we would make together. And it didn't require much more than that to make it happen. You know what it takes to make it happen. They know what causes it. And I look back on it and think, even with this value system where I think to myself oftentimes, life is hard. It's been really hard on me. Why did I bring more people into it? I look at I just have to envision the faces of these three people we brought into this world. And all my questions go out the window. All my doubts go out the window. It's easy then. I think of their beautiful names. Two of those cases, the men names that we chose for them, and one of them, the name that they chose for themselves. And I think of the parts of me that are duplicated in them are some of my favorite parts about them. Their being artists is some of my favorite things about them. Their being creative is some of the best thing I know about them, thing I love most about them. My autism in them is some of my favorite one of my favorite things about them. I never thought I'd imagine that. I never wanted to see that my children would have to suffer through what I suffered when we didn't know there was a word for it. And frankly, I don't think we do have the right word for it yet. That part of me duplicated in them is one of the most beautiful things about them. There's a great line in the movie Lost in Translation where Scarlett Johansson's character asks Bill Murray, playing basically Bill Murray, and she asks him, "What's it like having children?" And he tells her, if I remember correctly, he says, "It's terrifying. You're not sure what you're doing, what will happen if they ever find out that you don't know what you're doing. But then you just let them grow up. And suddenly one day, you look around and realize they're your favorite people." After 20 years of marriage and now a divorce, having gotten married is one of the best things I ever did in my life. And it's one of the few things I don't regret. My divorce is the next one because now this beautiful woman will grow into who she was supposed to become. She was never in a position to do that before she was married to me. I'd like to think at least some of her growth has been because she was married to me. And it was my privilege to be a part of that. It's been my privilege to be now the man that she has outgrown. And I'm excited for her future. I'm excited for her to discover who she is without me in the way. But more importantly, I'm excited for who I am going to become because I outgrew my toxicity, at least some of it, and I have more to do. And I commit now to you, but for my brothers out there, for whom there are so few people advocating. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I am going to start to advocate and stand up for my brothers in reason. We must educate ourselves and we must choose to become better. And we are the only ones who can give us permission. So I hope you, my brothers, will give yourselves permission. So you don't need it from somebody else. And if it were to help you to hear somebody else give it to you, I'm Joe, and I give you permission to become a better man. And I'm proud of you if you choose to do that. Good for you, brother. Good for you. Amen.
Still in a church that I'd left, your mother's plastic ivy, your sister's borrowed dress, and goddess that I'd met only a few weeks before. And 2 decades later, I couldn't love her more. That maiden grew into a woman with my name for the part I played. I won't ever be ashamed. What I want for you is to be yourself. May our precious years be treasured on the shelf. What I want for you is what I want for me. Let the girl I remember become who she's meant to be. We were only children, soon to have our own. I nearly lost you both, fear I'd never known. Fatherhood made me brave, added 2 children more. The maiden I had married became a mother I adored. She supported my dreams. Life had different plans, but her patience and love made me a better man. What I want for you is to be yourself. May our precious years be treasured on the shelf. What I want for you is what I want for me. Let the girl I remember become who she's meant to be. I won't hold you back, I cannot change for you. Tell that girl's story written in your truth. Don't think that I forgot your sister's borrowed gown, how I wept like a child as we swore those vows. I was privileged to watch You grow away from me. The person you'll become is who that girl was meant to be.